one of the things I like wish people would like buy more into is this. Well, it goes against the identity stuff, but it's like this permission to like change your mind. I think so many times we get like stuck in, oh, I committed to this, and so like I have to stick with it, and that's what creates a lot of this attachment of I'm invested in it, so I have to like stick with it as long as possible. And when like the commitment's like the starting place where, but things there should always be some degree of flexible where as you get feedback, like you want to take that feedback into account and make adjustments. And that could end up leading you down a totally different route. And, it's like the things that makes people depressed or frustrated or defeated is usually you're not receiving the feedback. And so you're sticking with something kind of just because you made the agreement with yourself at one point. And so all these things, you just have to be present with it. Like you can't just stay stuck in something just because you feel like it's a part of you. And then that leads into the second piece, which is, I think it's kind of messy, but I think it's also a beautiful thing to like fall apart. I think it's like because in that place you get more connected to yourself. Like you're all the things that aren't you start to fall away. And so this like kind of need for constant stability in terms of I need to be comfortable leads to so many problems because sometimes like people just really do need to align their life so that they could have this space to just really get real with themselves. And that can be very sloppy, but it's a necessary part for the long-term health of yourself or the long-term success where mental health is just we force ourselves to do all these things that we're not in alignment with. And so that just continues to accumulate and get worse over time. And so it's really just like allowing yourself that space to unwind old ideas, to be something different, to detach from the things you've known. And it's a scary process, and that's like the need for coaches. That's the need for people that are on a path that further along than you is, they can kind of guide you through that process a lot faster. It's, you know, I, I know how to fall apart. That's that's one thing that's for sure. Like I spent a lot of time in isolation, just reworking my mind, reconnecting with myself, getting super clear on these things. And so for me to help somebody through that process, it's like, you don't have to do the same thing I did. It can go so much faster. It can be so much smoother. I found all the pitfalls. I found all the areas I got stuck. And, and so it really smooths things out. So it's just like, it's an intimidating process, but it like doesn't have to be, right? Because it can be simplified, if you have the right guide. And so, the question's like, what are you really even holding on to? If things aren't working, they're not working. And if you've been stringing it along forever, like some things really do need to break. They need to fall apart, and that's a beautiful place to rebuild from. You can't just keep doing it because you've always done it and you feel like you have to do it because it's just like, is that just going to go on forever? That's not sustainable. One, but two, it's just like, what are you here to do? Like, is that what your life's going to be? Is just getting by? And so the reconnection process is just continually stripping away things that don't feel right anymore. You don't have to operate on the ideas that, your parents told you or your teachers taught you. That's a big reason I'm not a huge fan of a lot of systems like, group think of like, we all have to think the same or we all have to do the same things. And, that's one of the reasons I chose to be a coach too, rather than a therapist is, like systems can be limiting. They can be pretty black and white and it doesn't allow for this life to happen. And so it's, this ability to just get in tune with yourself and build confidence from that place. Cause it's either I have confidence, like functioning within somebody else's framework. That's not real confidence though, because that's like, it's borrowed confidence. And it's just because I have the structure that allows me to be more predictable, but at what cost, right? It's, I almost kind of lose like my own autonomy, my critical thinking skills, like my own preferences in the mix. So it's just the ability to take a look at that stuff and be like, well, there may be some aspects of something I like, but does that mean I need to trap myself into something? And so I'm more of a pick and choose person, like do the work to get clear on what you want and then try and like create your own thing. And that it takes creativity, it takes new thinking, but in the long run, it really builds this idea of like living life on your own terms, which is like something I've always wanted to do. And that's why I teach these.